So we have just come from the belt sander where we put the round over on both ends of our legs. It's mandatory that you put a round over on at least the top with the hole in it, but I think it's a great option to put a round over on the bottom as well. So they're all the same length, as well as they all have a half lap joint cut into them in the exact same spot. And today we're going to be opening that half lap joint up a little bit just to make sure that these can fit inside so that they're perfectly flush as well as a snug fit. So the way we're going to be doing that is on the ends of our crossbars as well as on our half lap joint in our legs. Anywhere that it needs to be a bit bigger, we're going to use a chisel and the use of a mallet as well. And we're going to be doing two separate types of cuts with the chisel. One is a paring cut, and the second is a chopping cut. When using a chisel, there are a few main rules that we're going to follow. The first is very important, but whenever we are using a chisel, it doesn't matter if it's a paring cut or a chopping cut, the work must be mounted in a vise. So that could be with the use of a bench dog, like this one, and it could be mounted like so, or that could be just using it in a vise like this and securing it nice and tight and mounting it like that. But whenever using a chisel and a mallet, you must have your piece mounted in a vise. Otherwise, what's going to happen is we're going to try to support it with our hand, and then you can slip, and then the chisel is going to be in your finger. And we really, really want to avoid that. So that's how we're going to be mounting our piece, either with the use of a bench dog or just in the vise, but it must be mounted when using a chisel. And the second thing we're going to do is we're always going to err on taking away as little material as possible. If you take away too much material, this is when you get bad fitting joints. So we're just going to do a little bit by little bit. And we're going to start with the chopping cut, where we're going to take away material on the walls of the joint. And then once we've done that and the joints fit together well, we're then going to worry about taking out material on the bottom, which is going to be called a paring cut. I'll bring you closer and show how I do the chopping cut. So here we have our leg securely mounted in the vise. And as we do this cut, we're going to constantly try to check our leg crossbar piece to see once this joint fits. Once it's wide enough, we're going to stop. So we should really only need to make minor adjustments to these joints, as we took out most of the material on the crosscut sled. But our goal is to make it a little bit wider while still keeping these walls perfectly flat and 90 degrees. So the way we're going to do that is with the chisel, with the flat side. There's one flat side and there's one side with the angle. We're going to make sure the flat side is towards our wall that we want to keep 90 degrees. And we're just going to take a tiny bit off, and constantly check our joint. And once it fits, we're no longer going to go any further. So how we're going to do this is you're going to hold the chisel kind of like a pen or a pencil. You're going to bring it right up to the wall that you want to take down a little bit. And again, we're only taking off about a ½ millimeter at a time, barely anything. And then with a mallet, you can tap it while keeping the chisel straight up and down is very important. So I'm going to do this in two cuts. I'm going to do it once on the left and then once on the right. You're going to tap it until you can hear the noise audibly change. That's how you know you're at the bottom of the half lap joint. And here we go. And now I've taken material on the one side over here. Now I'm going to move my chisel just to do the rest of that cut on the other side of that. And I'm going to check to see if my joint fits. And if it's snug, that's exactly how we want it. So if it's a little bit tight to fit in, that's great. So it looks like I can maybe take a tiny bit more. It looks like one side could use a little bit more. I'll take that off, make sure it's nice and 90 degrees. Now I'll check again. And it looks like my piece now fits. There we are. So I'm no longer gonna make it any wider. So that's great. The next thing I wanna do is I can do a pairing cut where I am going to remove material on both of these so that there's no ledge here. So I need to take a little bit from the leg and a little bit from the leg crossbar so that there is no bump right here. So the way I'm gonna do a pairing cut is, again, you're gonna mount your work in the vise. And then you're just gonna come along beside it while keeping your chisel 90 degrees to the ground, so keeping it really level. You're just gonna come across it and just lightly take off a little bit of material. So it's easy to take it off this side. And then if I wanna take material off on this side, I'm not going to do it like this because that would mean I am aiming the chisel at myself. I'm going to take the piece out, remount it in the vise, and take material out from the other side. So you shouldn't have to push very hard. You're also only taking off a little bit of material, and your goal is to have a nice flat bottom joint. So you're gonna take a little bit off by a little bit, and you're going to check with your leg crossbar as well as we go. So we still need to take a little bit more off, but you're going to go back and forth between taking it off of the leg as well as taking it off the leg crossbar until these will now meet perfectly flush. And if for some reason this is too short here and your leg crossbar does not reach all the way to the edge of your leg flush here, when you mount your leg crossbar, you can do a chopping cut and remove a little bit of material here as well. That way, everything will be nice and flush when we mount it. So now you're gonna just go through all your leg pieces and your leg crossbars. Once you get a joint that fits really well, it's a good idea to take a pencil and number the insides of that joint. So I could call this 1. And with the matching side, once this was ready, I still have to take a little bit of material off here, but once it was ready, you could write 1 in here as well, so that you know when you go to do your glue up, these are the joints that go together, and then there would be 2 and 2 on this side, and you would have 3 and 3 and 4 and 4. So that's just a good way to be organized, and you'll never see that because it'll be on the inside of the joint. So now I'm just gonna go through, clean up the rest of my joints until my leg assemblies all fit perfectly flush together. All right, and after a considerable amount of time, this is definitely a step that you need a lot of patience for. You really don't want to take too much material off quickly, as you'll have a loose fitting joint. So you really want them to be quite snug. Take off very, very small amounts at a time. But after a bit of time, I have all my joints that fit together, and I have them labeled with numbers. So I have 2 on a leg crossbar and 2 on a leg. They're going to fit together, and then on the other side I have 1 and 1. And so on. I have 3 matches with 3, as well as 4 matches with 4. So after that, I have 2 leg assemblies that look like this. The half lap joints are nice and tight fitting.